In this video, we will go over how to create a simple form. A form is a graphical interface that allows users to send information to the server. The form you see in the example is a form we will be creating. Note, this lesson only highlights some of the form elements and their required attributes. The form element has two attributes, method and action. The method attribute is the method used to send information to the server. The options are post and get. Post is better because it does not attach the information to the web address. Thus, it has no limit on size. The action is the file we will be sending our information to. For this example, we will enter form.php in this spot. Don't worry about the PHP file extension. HTML files cannot process form information, they can just send it. So we cannot use HTML here. The next two elements we will discuss are the label and text input elements. The label element is used to identify what data or value the form element needs. If you look at the example, I am using a label element to tell the user that they are to enter their first name into the text input element. The label must either contain the element or be connected to the element with the for and ID attributes. The for attribute is attached to the label, and the value of the attribute will be the same as the value of the ID attribute attached to the text input element. The reason for this is accessibility. For people who cannot see and rely on screen readers, they need to know what label is attached to what element. The text input element allows the user to enter one line of text. This element is actually an input element with the required type attribute. The type attribute will have the value of text to display a text box. The name attribute is what names the type of data being sent to the server. In this example, the name attribute contains the value first name. There should be no spaces in the name value. This means that whatever data the user enters in that box will be identified as a user's first name. The next element we need to discuss is the Textarea element. The Textarea element allows the user to write multiple lines of text. The Textarea element requires a name attribute as well, but does not require a type attribute because the element is written as Textarea. The Textarea element is written as shown. The select box allows a user to click on an arrow on the right side and a list of selections will appear. Each selection is an option element which must have a value attribute. In the example shown, the select element contains multiple option elements. The select element has a name attribute assigned to it. It does not have a type attribute because its type is the name of the element select. In this example, the select box name is shirt size, while the option element value is the size of the shirt selected. The option value does not have to match the text within the opening and closing elements, but it should be representative of it. The radio button allows the user to select one of many possible options per group. In the example, the user can select a small, medium, or large shirt, but cannot select a small and large shirt. As you can see from the example, the radio button is an input element with a required type attribute that has a value of radio. It also must have a value attribute where the value is representative of what the label text is. In the first line of our example, we have the value of SM, which is an abbreviation for the label text of small. Radio buttons are placed in groups designated by the value assigned to their name attribute. All the radio buttons that have the same value assigned to their name are in the same group. A user can only select one radio per group. In the example, we have one group of shirt sizes. A user can select only one shirt size. Checkboxes allow the user to select one or more than one of many possible options. Checkboxes do not belong to any type of grouping. In the example below, a user can select one size of a shirt or all sizes of shirts. As you can see from the example, the checkbox is an input element with a required type attribute that has a value of checkbox. It also must have a value attribute where the value is representative of what the label text is. In the first line of our example, we have the value of SM, which is an abbreviation for the label text of small. The last thing we will look at is the Submit button. The Submit button allows us to submit the information in the form to the server. The Submit button has two attributes, the type and value. Below is the code for creating a Submit button. As you can see, I have the type equals submit and the value submit form. The value is what will appear as text on the button. Now that we have looked at the elements and their attributes, let's go to our text editor to see how the code is written. I've written all the code to create the form as shown in the browser. I added a little CSS for styling, but we don't need to be concerned with that right now. Also, as I go through the code, windows will appear showing what the element looks like and behaves like. When looking at the code, you can see I created a form element that contains all the other elements. I set the method attribute to post and the action to form.php. The text input box with a label of first name is written with the label element containing it. You can see I also have the type attribute that equals text and the name attribute that equals first name. The text input box with the label of last name is similar to the first name one, but instead of containing the element in a label element, I connect the label element to the text box using the label for attribute, which has the same value as input ID attribute. I did this to show an example of using the for attribute method. The rest of the elements in this example will be contained within a label element. I wrote the Textarea element next. You can see that it is written differently as it does not have an input element with a type attribute. The text area must have a name attribute. The next element I wrote was the select element. This element contains a number of option elements. In this example, the option elements contain states. Notice how I have a value for each option element that is the abbreviation of the written state. The user will see the written state, but the state abbreviation will be what is sent to the server. After the select statement, I wrote a series of radio buttons. The radio button is an input element that has a type attribute. The type attribute's value is radio. Each name attribute of the radio button is the same. This means that the radio buttons are in the same group. Because they are in the same group, I can only select one of them. The checkboxes, written with type equals checkbox, are similar to the radio buttons, except I can check as many or as few as I want. The name attributes have the same value, but they can have the same value or they cannot. It all depends on what you want to do. Even though the checkboxes have the same value, they do not belong to any group. You will see I have a paragraph element over the radio buttons and checkboxes. This is just to make it clear to the user what the radio buttons and checkboxes represent. Other than that, they're not part of the form, and depending on what you're doing, may or may not be needed. The last is a submit button written as type equals submit. The submit button does not require a label. As previously stated, the value attribute text is displayed on the button. That completes this video on creating a basic form.